Hi, this is Rebecca
And Leslie.
with the Geeky Girls Night In podcast. Geeky Girls Night In is a podcast with your fandom family sleepover style.
Empowering fans and creating inclusive fan spaces where we can all be ourselves.
So get your jammies,
Grab a drink,
gather the fur babies,
and join the conversation.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us for our episode this week on mental health in entertainment. This week we talk about our Weeks in Geek, which included me having my gayest day ever.
And me getting super excited for E3, also talking a little bit about our fans. So
Cool. Then later we interview, drumroll, ourselves. You will get to know your Geeky Girls a little better, including who we all stand for life.
And we discuss the art and entertainment we believe do the best jobs in portraying mental illness.
So thanks for joining us on this episode, and we hope you enjoy the show. Okay, so our first segment is, as usual, our Week in Geek. Leslie, do you want to kick it off?
So first of all, I want to thank everybody for downloading and subscribing. We finally hit over 1,000 downloads last week, and episode 5 was our biggest download episode out of our second biggest episode download out of all 5. Episode 1 was number 1.
Thanks,
Also,
Jules.
we got a really nice tweet about the podcast from Emily, mtimmons_1 on Twitter. And she says, looking for a podcast that focuses on fandom and diversity? Then come check out Geeky Girl Guide's new pod, Geeky Girls Night In. It's absolutely fantastic and happens to figure, I think she meant feature, 2 of the loveliest ladies you'll ever meet. So thank you so much, Emily.
Thanks, Emily.
Fun fact, I went and saw Hunger Games with Emily when it first came out. That was the day the weekend that I saw Hunger Games 3 separate times.
Wow.
So I don't remember how, me and Emily had made plans to go see it because my husband scoffed at it, thought it was a teeny bopper flick. But then apparently he got on Rotten Tomatoes and saw that it had a great rating, so then he wanted to go see it. So we went to the drive-in and saw it then too, that same day, same exact day. And I can't remember why I saw it a third time. I think somebody wanted to go see it and needed somebody, so I was like, why the hell not? So yeah, fun times.
Well, thanks, Emily.
Thank you so much. Also, E3, technically it starts on the 12th, but they've already started having press conferences and things like that. And I want to give a shout out to all of you Kingdom Hearts fans. I'm not a Kingdom Hearts person. I played it like once. I got bored. It's not my bag, but I know that you guys have been waiting for Kingdom Hearts 3 forever.
Yeah, my son's a big Kingdom Hearts fan.
So January 2019 is apparently the release date of Kingdom Hearts 3.
Cool, exciting.
Yay. I know everybody was really excited about pretty much everything. It looks like they encompassed all the worlds, it said, except for the Incredibles, which you win some, you lose some. So, but yeah, January 2019, look out for Kingdom Hearts. Hopefully it doesn't get pushed back again.
Nice. That's so cool. Well, I had like just an absurdly epic week in my geek. So, I mean, I am in my 40s. I do not go out on weeknights. Like, it's not something that I do. I go to bed. I'm also not a night person. But this last week, there was 2 things happening so phenomenal that not only did I stay up, but I drove my happy ass out to LA twice. That's right. Twice in 1 week during the week. So, first on Tuesday night, I went to see Blind Spotting. So it's an indie movie. It stars David Diggs and one of his lifelong best friends, Rafael Casal. And basically, I'd heard about it because, I'm obsessed with David Diggs. I think he is everything that is good and wonderful in this world. And so I saw he was in a movie, and I was like, oh man, indie movies, they pre-screen all the time, like before they get distribution deal, so I might be able to see it because, I didn't want to wait. So I'm a UCLA alum and saw that the Film Society was doing a screening. So I drove my ass out there. It took me like over 2 hours to get out there. I'm out in the Inland Empire and I'm like 60 miles away, but it took me a long time because it was not great timing. But oh my God, was it worth it? It was so freaking worth it. I cannot tell you. First of all, the movie was amazing. Like, we need these kind of movies being made right now. It was funny. It was exciting. People of color telling their own stories. You know what I mean? A lot of really important topics, and we can, get into that as well. I'll probably mention it during the interview. And then the cast, which also includes two amazing women. Jasmine Cephas Jones is one of them, which if you are a Hamilton fan, you also know her because she's also a part of the Hamilton cast. And then also a woman who I haven't seen in a lot of things yet, Janina Gavankar. But she was freaking amazing. She was so great. They did Q&A for like an hour, and then they all sat down on the stage and just sat there and talked to everybody for over an hour until everybody got to talk to them. So it was amazing. I wrote a review. It's up on the blog, and I also tweeted and posted some pictures on Facebook of me with the cast. So it was really amazing. Cool. And definitely go see it. It opens July 20th. And then the only thing that could have dragged my ass out to LA again on a weeknight was Sense8. So do either of you watch Sense8?
No.
It is one of my favorite shows to ever be created. And it's made by the same sibling team as The Matrix. And basically it was canceled by Netflix. And the last scene was literally the middle of like a bunch of action. I mean, you couldn't have been more cliffhanger than that. It was just very upsetting. And people got so upset that we got a 2-hour finale. And so Sense8 has a lot of LGBT themes and characters. There's a trans woman played by a trans woman, written by a trans woman. So GLAAD, which is a nonprofit organization that advocates for rights of LGBT people, they actually had a screening the day before it was released on Netflix. And you are not going to believe, I'm going to have to do a blog post on this too, because it was the most amazing experience. You would not believe. Okay. First, like, the Netflix execs got in front and was like, hey, thank you everyone for coming, and we're really not the devil, I swear, and then like the executive director was like, got up, was like, thank you for coming, they're really not the devil, I swear. And then he also thanked the crew, and then he was like, okay guys, get out your phones. And we were like, what? Because at pre-screenings you have to turn your phones off. He's like, normally you have to sign these out, but we got something special for you. So we were all like, oh my God, what's going on? And grabbing our phones, like, turn on.
Oh no.
Because we were like, oh Jesus Christ, what is happening? And Linda Perry came out, the singer-songwriter. She wrote What's Going On. It was a Four Non-Blonde song. She's also wrote like every song that's ever been a massive hit in the world. But that was like her band's big song, and they played in Sense8. And it's like a very, very like inspiring, sentimental moment. Well, she comes out on the theater stage with her guitar, starts singing, and then after like 5 minutes, she's like, okay, who's going to sing with me? And we were like, what? Everyone's like, what? And she's like,
what's going on?
Yeah. She's like, come on. And then one like brave girl from like an aisle ran up to the mic with her and started singing. And she just like puts her arm out like, yeah, come on. And then we all just started rushing the stage, and there was like 4 or 5 of the actors there from the show, and they all ran up too, and we were all like singing at the top of our lungs together. It was such an amazing experience. You just would not believe.
That is so cool. That's like when I went and saw Michael Bublé in concert, and I had floor seats, but I was still kind of far back, and he was like, everybody crowd around. Like I've told you guys a million times, I am not athletic, not in the slightest. But I leaped over somebody.
You have to, girl. You have to.
And realized that my friend Kim was not with me. So then I leaped back over the person again, grabbed Kim, and rushed the stage. And I was so close. Like there was one girl in front of me, and I'm 5'1.5", and she was like 6'2".
Oh my God.
And the person that was next to her saw me struggling and grabbed my arm,
Aw.
yanked me in front of that girl, and kind of pushed the girl back and was like, "You can see." And it was like, "Oh, thank you." So,
Yeah, I mean, it was, and then so, there we were with the cast, and it's Pride Month, and it was kicking off Pride weekend. And so the cast was there. Linda Perry was singing, and she's lesbian. She's married to Sarah Gilbert. And then I saw, couples around me, same-sex couples, like with their arms around each other, just yelling out the song. And I was just like, this is one of the sweetest, most lovely surprises like I've ever experienced. And I was saying the really gayest day ever, because I actually kind of sort of came out the same day, and it still feels really weird to say. And it's funny because, of course, I've mentioned on the show that I'm bisexual, or I guess we could say pansexual. And it's on my Twitter bio even, but
maybe that's why I was so confused. I'm like,
honey,
I already knew this.
Honey, but you're my internet friend, you see.
Why is everybody applauding? Doesn't everybody already know this?
No, honey. Only my internet friends. And I find it so hilarious how people always are like kind of shit on like internet friendships, and oh, you're just tweeting, or you're just Facebooking, or you're just Tumblring, or whatever. But we're often much, much more open with the people we know online for a million reasons. One, we found them and sought them out because we had things in common, not because geographically they happened to live next to us. And the thing is, Facebook is where my family and people that I know in real life live. And most of them did not know, but mostly
now they do.
And mostly, mostly I did it just for myself, because, I still have a lot of internalized crap where I feel embarrassed about it. I was brought up. I mean, you guys can read the post if you want. It's on my author page, which is public. Just Rebecca Rodriguez Lynn. And, I know that a lot of people that are in my family and that I love will tell you that homosexuality is a sin and gay people are going to burn in an actual literal hell. So, it was a little bit like I texted my son first. And of course, I raised that child right. He was like, I am proud of you. I love you. And you know what? If anybody responds poorly, then that's how you know who to cut out of your life. I was like, oh my God, I love you so much. And then, I went from being terrified to reading all of the messages and getting to the bottom and processing. And that process made me feel a lot more, I still have a ways to go, but it still felt very strengthening. And then to be at the Sense8 screening, jumping up and down, screaming the song was like just a really special day.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. And then, again, I'll write all this up and put all the amazing pictures, because the cast, they did not stay afterwards and talk to people. It was more of a like, no more pictures kind of situation. But it was still a really nice experience. And then I just also wanted to stick in here, Jules, the lovely Jules Wilkinson, who we interviewed through our last episode. She is looking for fan artists for the swag bags for Wayward Cocktails. So we talked about Wayward Cocktails. It's a Supernatural fan party. And Jules puts together really great swag bags, and she buys, items from fan artists. So if you are a fan artist, get in touch with Jules. Her Twitter handle is superwiki, and, definitely connect there.
Yeah, she's absolutely lovely.
Yes. And then before we move on to the interview, we have Quinzel here again this week.
Hi.
Hey, and Quinzel said she has something for Weekend Geek. You want to hit it?
Yes, you probably heard me gasp out loud. I don't know, at the beginning of Leslie's segment about
right.
E3
Yes.
and Kingdom Hearts. And I'm going to let you talk, Leslie. I am, but Beyonce had the best video of all time. All time.
What do you mean?
Like
the best video? Well, she was at E3?
No, it's because Kingdom Hearts is just not, like, I'm playing it and I'm like, what am I doing here? Why is Goofy here? Why is Donald
wait.
here?
But what's Beyonce got to do with it? I'm so confused right now.
You're a little confused, Rebecca. She's
why are you bringing
mad because I'm
reference.
Yeah, she's mad because I'm like, I don't play Kingdom Hearts. I really don't like it. But,
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Like, here is my very quick segue because I am a very avid Kingdom of Hearts fan.
There you go.
Personally, you probably shouldn't start in getting that emotionally invested in it, because let me tell you something about Kingdom Hearts. It is the boyfriend that you meet, that you go on a date with. He has flowers. He is punctual. He is nice. Then he tells you that he has a wife. But it's okay because they're separated.
Oh, no.
So you just got to wait a little bit. So you wait around, you're good, you're dating. You go on a third date, you go on a fourth date. He doesn't bring it up, so you kind of awkwardly bring it up to him. I am going to leave her October 14th. Do not worry. I'm going to leave her. We're going to move into an apartment together. This is going to happen. And
this actually happened to me when I was in my 20s.
Girl,
Except,
why are you trying to give me flashbacks? That's all I have.
Right, except I didn't want him to leave his wife. I didn't want him. He had some accent pieces that I thoroughly enjoyed.
Okay, but I'm still trying to connect. Why? What has this got to do with Kingdom Hearts?
Because Kingdom Hearts always says, Kingdom Hearts 3 is coming out. We promise it's coming out. It's coming out. We don't have a date yet, but it's coming. It's coming.
But they have a date now.
Hold on. Now they have a date, and I'm supposed to trust you? I have put so much into this. I have been excited, and I have been disappointed and crying out in the rain. I have seen the trailer with Baymax, thinking that this thing was coming, and it is not. And you know what? If you do not deliver to me in January 2019, Kingdom Hearts,
say it to them. Say it directly to them, Quinzel.
I am packing up my stuff. I am taking your stuff and I'm throwing it on lawn because I am done. And that's it.
I think that's reasonable.
I mean, like I know that they've had issues where it's coming, but they've never given a date as far as I know. So
all right.
I get my Kingdom Hearts news typically from Kid Fury and his excitement on the read. But yeah, like I said, that has never been my jam. Like I remember when Kingdom Hearts 1 came out, and I remember trying to play it, and I'm like, why is everybody so emotionally invested in this? I cannot.
Because it's amazing.
Okay. Well, I wish you the best, Quinzel, and I hope that they actually come out with it when they say they do. So fingers crossed.
Yes.
Because they will feel your wrath otherwise. So
we'll podcast about it in January. I'll
okay.
be throwing their clothes on the lawn.
I'll make a note in my planner.
Okay, all right. Okay, guys. All right, so now we're going to get to the interview. Okay. For our interview, we have the coolest celebrity interviews ever, us, your Geeky Girls. So today we have me, Leslie, Quinzel, and Michelle, and we're going to do quick introductions. So as you know, I'm one of the hosts. I blog occasionally, and I post sometimes on the social media accounts. And yeah, that's about it. You guys have seen my face already a lot on the social media accounts, I think. Leslie.
I'm Leslie. I created Geeky Girl's Guide to Life, and yeah.
And
I live in Indiana. I have a kid. I have a husband. I have a dog. I have a cat that I do not claim.
That poor cat.
I hate that cat. He's an asshole. And like every time we record, he comes down in the basement and sits on a chair and stares at me.
Oh my God.
That's okay. Mine won't let me talk on the phone, so I understand.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
And then, so basically, Leslie, I'd seen Leslie, and Leslie and I are friends online. And then I also had seen her blog. And so I called her. I was like, Leslie, we should do a podcast. And that's how it started.
There you go.
And then we had a few people. Oh, what were you saying?
No, I'm done.
Okay. Okay. And so we have two other Geeky Girls who do different things for the podcast and the blog. First, we have Quinzel. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Quinzel Lee. I created Baby 5 months ago. We will refer to this child as Baby 8 because that's what we do.
Oh.
Technically, I don't really sound that serious, but I guess I am the community and content manager. So I am like a professional thingamajig for Geeky Girl's Guide to Life. But no, I basically do all the talking and the smoozing and the writing. Not all the writing. Obviously, I share it with you guys. But
Well, you
I
do
love
it.
it.
Yeah, you do a lot for our Facebook page, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. So when you see QL, that me. Have fun with that.
And then last but definitely not least, Michelle.
Hey, so I just recently started contributing to the blog. I've only written 2 pieces so far, and I help a little bit out on Twitter, and that's basically it. Oh, Becca's my sister.
Yes, we are sisters.
So I probably got the gig because of nepotism, to be honest. I did not earn it in any way, but I feel like bring a little bit to the table, maybe just tiny.
I mean,
And
internet friends.
Right?
And everybody says they can't tell our voices apart, so we will try to be very clear about who is talking. So yeah, that's your team. And today we're going to talk about the topic of art and entertainment that gets mental illness right. We kind of came on this topic because Quinzel is going to do a review of 13 Reasons Why. And she and I were talking about it, and it was really a mixed bag. Like, some things are good, some things not so good. And we thought, it'd be great if we could really talk about and promote the shows that actually get it right. So that's kind of what we're doing here. So we'll talk about why it's important, and then we'll pick our best portrayals of mental illness in media. So we're just going to start off with perspective at first. Like, who are we to judge? What do we know about mental illness? None of us are therapists. But it turns out we do kind of know a lot because we're all educated at the School of Hard Knocks. So, so for me personally, I've had I have survived and dealt with 25 years of major depression now and PTSD and then anxiety disorder. So I know a lot about surviving, and this is a topic that matters a lot to me. Leslie, do you want to?
Sure. This is kind of difficult. I've dealt with depression and, as I get older, more moderate anxiety through my life. I am Black, and a lot of old school Black families, a lot of people with old school Black families will tell you it's not the best environment to be depressed or have anxiety in, because just believe in God and He will take it away. And I am here to tell you that we will get into that. But no. So that's me. Quinzel?
So, Leslie, are we related?
Possibly.
Cause same. But in all honesty, my background, I also deal with a lot of generalized anxiety. Very recently, with the birth of my child, I actually dealt with pretty severe postpartum depression, which usually when people think of postpartum depression, they think of, putting their small babies in microwaves. They don't understand.
Yeah.
They don't tend to understand the layers of, it's not always towards the baby. For me, it was very much towards me, like, oh God, I'm awful. I'm a terrible mom. I'm a terrible person. Like, I'm not doing anything, crying for 4 hours. It's, if anybody out there has experienced it, it's something that I definitely in the beginning struggled with and still struggle with till this day. But Leslie and Rebecca are the best. That's all I can say about that.
Oh, we love you. And Michelle.
Well, I'm sure Becca's mentioned we've had a lot of shit in our family go down, and I think we've all just dealt with it in different ways. A lot of grief, a lot of really, really dark places. But mainly these days it's just anxiety that I deal with. I don't think I've had a real serious bout of depression in a while, but very, very, very familiar with it. And it seems like every friend and family member I have has dealt with it in some way. So it's just been a part of my entire adult life in one way or another.
I feel like all four of us, each of us could be like a different professor at Hogwarts School of mental illness, surviving that shit. I'm just saying.
I can take the class on bad coping strategies. I will teach that one.
Is there cake involved in that one?
Always cake. Always cake.
Oh God.
So
I'll be like, this is what not to do.
That's an
The
important
last 10
class.
years of my life.
That's an important class. So, I also want to talk about why is it important that fictional media get the topics of mental illness seriously? Like, we're here talking about it because we think it's important. And, a lot of the stuff, it's when we're talking about fictional stuff, sometimes fantasy, sci-fi, cartoons, So the question, I just want to have a setup is, why is this important to us? Why does it matter? So, for me, I think it very much connects to what we were talking about in the episode with Judy Siklos, is that, fictional and genre entertainment a lot of times is a way we work out our anxieties as a people, and then it reflects it back to us. And it's a really powerful thing. And so I think even though the worlds can be fantastical, the human emotion it has to be authentic. So what do you think, Leslie?
I think that getting it right is imperative, because getting it completely wrong can just completely alienate somebody. Quinzel was talking about her postpartum depression. I struggled with a little bit of that after Geeky Baby was born. It wasn't severe, and honestly, I didn't actually need to be medicated or anything for it. Like, I just broke down crying in the OBGYN's office because my baby was 3 months old. Healthcare in the United States sucks. And I didn't want to go back to work, and I didn't want to leave her. So a lot of times, like she said, the media portrays postpartum depression as you wanting to drive off a cliff with your child or some such nonsense. And it's not that. And to see accurate portrayals of things like that makes people realize, well, hey, maybe something is wrong. Maybe I should talk to somebody. That sort of thing.
Yeah, the real people with real problems. It can save people's lives. So,
yeah.
Does that sound right to you, Quinzel?
Yeah. Everything that Leslie said is just, that hits home for me, actually. But I do want to say that I feel that it's really important for media to portray things correctly, because especially when you're not in the right headspace, I would just say, for me personally, I remember being 13, and I don't know if you guys remember this show. It was on ABC Family, and it was about like troubled kids. There was like a summer camp.
What was it called?
I don't know what it was called, but it was ABC. It was on ABC Family.
Was it the Fat Camp?
No. Well, no. It was like Higher Ground or something like that. Maybe it wasn't ABC Family. Yeah, it was like Higher Ground. It was a super serious show. Everybody kind of went to this summer camp because they had different mental illnesses or family issues or things like that. And I remember it being so sensationalized to the point where one of the characters, which surprisingly enough, like early 2000s, late 90s, didn't happen, but they had talked about cutting in that episode. And I was 13 and I was watching it, and it was almost like, oh, okay, like that's how I can cope kind of thing. There was no kind of follow-up. The story wasn't done responsibly. So 13-year-old me didn't really, I didn't process it the way it was irresponsible is all I can say.
Yeah. So
it's important for the media to get it right, because you really don't know who you're out there affecting.
Absolutely. What do you think, Michelle?
Well, yeah, obviously I agree with all of that. The only thing I would add to is, I was born in 1980, and I always loved sort of serial killer motifs, as Rebecca knows very well. True crime is like my poison. And I grew up watching all these movies like that I love to this day. Don't get me wrong, like Silence of the Lambs, all these things. But I grew up literally thinking things like schizophrenia were synonymous with being a murderer. All of these like sort of killers in these fictional stories, they would always have some sort of diagnosis. And, so you grow up thinking, oh, bipolar, schizophrenia, all these things, that means you're going to hurt somebody else. When obviously statistically you're way less likely to hurt somebody else. And it's very harmful, because you tend to ostracize people in society if you feel like they're dangerous because of mental illness. And I think that's really irresponsible and lazy. to be honest. You know, they need a reason why somebody's killing people. So they're like, oh, let's just make them mentally ill. In reality, mentally ill people are not anywhere near more likely to commit a crime. And on top of that, you know, what are you doing to these people's lives that are trying to just go about their day and live their life? And now everybody finds out they're mentally ill and they're like, oh, they're going to jump at me with a knife. Like, but that's how I grew up. Like, I didn't, until the 90s, I never saw a positive portrayal in the media of somebody who had a mental illness.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's all incredibly important because it's impact on people. That's the most important thing. So, so what we're going to do now is basically do what every fangirl and fan in general loves to do, which is talk about their favorite things in media and pick apart what it is that we love about them. So basically, it's our heroine. So I'll go ahead and start with Leslie, and we'll just go around and basically you can talk about a piece of entertainment where you went, damn, they really got that right, and why you felt they got it right. So do you want to start us off, Leslie?
I've been thinking about this question, and I don't watch a whole lot of TV. So I was really struggling with it. And then I thought about something. I listen to podcasts more than I do anything else. And number one, The Read with Kid Fury and Quinzel, they talk about mental illness constantly. They both deal with it. I believe they're both in therapy. They're unabashed about how they talk about it and what they need to do. And at one point, Kid Fury was visiting his family in Jamaica, and he forgot his antidepressants at home. And he talked about how he was fine for day one, but by the end of day two, it was midnight, and he was just in the water crying for no. And the way he put it was hilarious, but it really wasn't. And I think we all know people that have dealt with that, you know, like they've run out of their meds, or they're in a position where they're trying to figure out what works for them, and they wish that they could be crying in the ocean. So that's one. And then the other one, Hello from the Magic Tavern. Not typically dealing with mental illness, but there is an episode in their first season where they try to make Arnie feel like the Dark Lord tries to make Arnie feel like he's actually mentally ill, and he's actually imagined this place, and he's got to fight through it to realize what his truth is. Kind of like the episode of Buffy that you were talking about.
Yeah, Normal Again.
At one point.
Normal Again.
Yeah. So it's slightly, no, it's I don't even know how to describe it. Hello from the Magic Tavern is kind of a silly premise, but the way, and like this whole situation, that whole episode was completely silly, but it kind of struck a chord. You know what I mean? So
yeah, absolutely.
Those are my two.
Cool. Okay. Quinzel, you got some up your sleeve?
Yeah. So actually, I guess it's maybe a little dark, but helped me in a really odd way. I know you guys have probably sat through a Law and Order SVU marathon or two.
Mm-hmm.
I've probably spent half my life doing that by now. There's this one episode in the later seasons where Detective Rollins is there, Stabler's already gone, Benson's there. There is a sexual assault on a college campus, and of course, since we know how this always plays out, they, really just make the victim, make her go through the ringer. And we already know at the beginning of the episode that it happened. So toward the end, the girl, she's talking to Detective Rollins, and she's like, I'm really happy right now. I feel like I have a lot of things to look forward to, and, I'm going to go to class. I'm going to do everything. And Detective Rollins was like, are you sure? Are you sure? And she says, yeah. You know, I feel really good about this. And then the very next morning, she had jumped off a building to her death. And as dark as that sounds, in that moment, I was like, oh my God, I do that. I am that person that, you know, I wait until, you know, I always try to make myself look happier, feel happier, like, hey, like, and when I'm like that, that's usually the point where somebody needs to probably say something to me. And so it actually helped me to kind of take a look at myself and say, okay, I still do it. I do. But I take a look at myself and say, okay, like trying to be more honest with myself when I am in a darker place, knowing that I need to reach out and not that I need to increase my happy in order to make everybody else around me more comfortable.
That's so important. Yeah. Because that is what will kill us, trying to pretend and make other people comfortable. Yeah, absolutely. What was that episode called? Do you remember?
I don't remember what it was called. You know what? I'm going to have to research it so we can put it in the show notes later, but it's definitely the season of Detective Rollins, Benson, and No More Stabler.
Oh, okay.
I bet like somebody out there is going to comment and going to say, oh, it's episode blah, 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 the trial of this. And I'm going to be like, okay, because, you know, I took a break from SVU because, you know, it got way dark.
Yeah.
So
I haven't seen it in years, so.
good for you.
I quit after Stabler left. I couldn't take it. My heart couldn't take it.
Yeah.
I needed breaking up the dream team on me.
Yeah, I needed the dream team too. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have another one you wanted to mention, Quinzel? I don't know. If you brought any more examples.
No, that one really was one that really struck me because it just really, even though it was dark the way it ended, they usually have the person be really, really happy and then everything's fine and it's great. And that was just really sobering for me. Like, damn it.
Yeah.
Now I got some accountability. God.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't actually seen that episode, but that makes me think of, you know, a lot of people are giving really good advice sort of on Twitter and social media right now, because obviously with the recent really heartbreaking suicides, everybody's basically like, you know, there are those people that are just going to be like, I'm fine. Like they're going to lie to you. So you need to think of other strategies. If you suspect, like you just text them, tell them I miss you, or how, you know, I love you, or like, hey, I can't believe how long it's been since we blah, blah, blah. Let's go do this. Like, you know, find another way, because that person might just be lying to your face because they want, you know, they don't want to be a bother, or they don't want to be seen a certain way. So it's really important to take that into account when you ask someone how they're doing. Like they just might be trying to tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah. And absolutely. So Michelle, what's your example?
Well, I've only got one, and I'm glad I picked something light, since now we can go from like heavy to light. But I was thinking, and it's funny because I watch, you know, so many heavy shows, so many dark shows. I watch a lot of horror movies, all this stuff. But the one that kind of sprung to mind for me, and I don't know if all of you guys, I know Becca hasn't. Have you guys seen Iron Man 3?
Yeah.
Is that the one where he has PTSD?
Where he's having some anxiety. He's like, I don't think I have PTSD, but the reason why I liked it, and the plot is kind of just like your normal, generic sort of superhero Marvel thing. And it's fine. It's not nowhere near like my top 5 Marvel movies. But what I appreciated about the portrayal of him having anxiety attacks is like Tony Stark is, you know, the coolest, quote unquote, like Avenger. He's Iron Man. He's tough. He's this, but he wasn't, not only was he not embarrassed to like have this problem, but also it wasn't portrayed as like, it wasn't the whole plot. They didn't try to make it the reason for like the entire thing. It was basically like, this is a normal thing that is happening to him because he had to fight aliens and almost died. And so, you know, he had a couple of anxiety attacks along the way during this movie, but it was never like, this is the plot of the movie. They didn't try too hard because Marvel, it ain't deep. You know, they're very flashy, superhero-y. So instead, they just sort of wove it into the story. Like, he wasn't cured at the end. There was no big answer to it. Like, oh, he had, you know, trauma and now it's gone. And in fact, it's completely woven into the entire plot of Ultron. If you watch Ultron without watching Iron Man 3, you're like, what the hell is Tony like doing? Like, this makes no sense. But if you watch Iron Man 3, you see that he's terrified. You know, now that he knows that the alien invasion, all this stuff is possible, he's just consumed consumed with the idea of how can I protect my friends? How can I protect Pepper? Like,
so
and
that's why he was all gung ho about the Sokovia
yes,
Accords.
right. Because he was literally just, he's petrified. Ever since the first Avengers movie, he has lived his life petrified. He was up for 72 hours straight at the beginning of the movie. He had an anxiety attack in a restaurant with War Machine, who I love. But he went into a suit and he's like, what's wrong? Am I having a heart attack? What's wrong with my brain? And the suit's like, nothing. You're physically fine. And he's like, so I've been poisoned. And the suit's like, Jarvis. It's like, you had an anxiety attack, my man. And he's just like, what? Like, I don't do that. But, now he does that. And that's literally the entire foundation for what happens in Ultron, because he has nightmares constantly. When Scarlet Witch first gets into his mind and shows him his deepest, darkest fear, it is literally his friends all dead and Cap dying and saying, you could have prevented this, because he feels he's this genius. So it's on his shoulders to like think of a solution that will save everybody he loves, save the planet. People talk a lot about Cap being the head of the Avengers, and he is, but Tony feels Cap is kind of out of time. He feels a little distant, I think, from everyone, understandably. Like Bucky, that's why he's so attached to Bucky. Bucky comes from where he's from. But with Tony, I feel like he feels that responsibility because he has the most resources, because he feels, he has the brain, all this stuff. So Ultron really came out of, and it was a dumb choice, don't get me wrong. He messed that jam up. But it came out of this need to protect everyone and this feeling that if he doesn't and they die, it's his fault. So I feel like they did a really good job of making it a part of his character, part of his personality, a part of the story, without making it over the top, like we're just going to make it be about this, because Marvel could not handle it.
Well, also, it seems like in a way that's more powerful because they're not sensationalizing it and they're treating it as normal, especially, like you said, I haven't seen it, but, and then part of it is because I'm not super like attracted to the character, not sexually, but just attracted to the character of Iron Man, because he was terrible, definitely like, he was introduced as like the height of just this toxic masculinity. He was like a weapons dealer, and, so I think to give that character, some actual backstory of having mental illness and it not be something everybody freaks out about and they just go about dealing with life, like that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and like nobody in his life was surprised when it started happening at all. In fact, when he finally tells Pepper, like, I don't know if you've noticed, but I haven't been sleeping. She's like, really? Are you kidding me? Like, and that's another thing I kind of like about the Iron Man movies. I'm not a fan of the second one. I like the first one. I think the third one is the best. But I like that it's the most real as far as like Pepper and Tony actually like do it and like live together and have a real relationship. Like where Thor and Jane is very like storybook and like very, shallow and kind of. And I adore both those people, and I love Thor. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, like, it's nice to see two grown-ups, like, sort of just live together. And, she's getting so frustrated with him because he's having these night terrors and these nightmares. And she's like, you can't just hide behind the suits. That's what you're doing. You're distracting yourself and not dealing with it. And, it's just a part of the story. They don't try to make it be like this huge sort of like, oh, he's got to deal with it. They're just like, this is what's going on. This is part of your personality now and part of your life. And deal with it in a better way than getting us blown up for the millionth time.
That sounds like the best way they could handle it, to be honest.
I was actually shocked because like I didn't even think they would try for all that. Like that could have gone either way very easily. So I was impressed that they managed to not shoot themselves in the foot.
Oh. Well, I have two examples, though. One will be pretty short because I saw it this week. I mentioned it at the beginning, but this indie movie Blind Spotting with Daveed Diggs and Rafael Casal, which is coming out next month. And
you met Daveed Diggs, you met him. That's so exciting.
Him. Yeah, I'll never be the same. And Daveed and Rafael wrote this. We're on a first name basis now, as you know, and so you can tell like it's written in a very, very authentic way. It's their lives and the people that they grew up with. It's kind of their love letter to Oakland. But it does something I can't think of many movies that do this. And that is it shows, again, without sensationalizing or going too hard on it, just showing it as a part of life is PTSD from, the main character witnesses a police shooting. And PTSD from people living in neighborhoods where they can be subject to police brutality, people of color, men of color who are afraid of existing in public. I think just showing, there's effects to this. You know, people tend to only talk about PTSD in the sense of combat veterans. But, you know, some of the streets people grew up on, it's like living in a war zone. And I think it's easy to discount that. But it also doesn't sensationalize it either. I mean, he really barely talks about it. It just kind of happens. Like he has a nightmare, which is part of PTSD. And then there are times, like, it's just these tiny little touches throughout the movie because he's sitting at a red light when he witnesses this. And throughout the movie, when, you know, they're in a moving company, so they're driving a lot. And when they're sitting at a red light, like the way they shoot it is just is very subtle, but you're like, oh, shit, it brings you back to it without them even doing anything. You know what I mean? It was just like the repetition of seeing the red light and then hearing the blinker, that it would kind of remind you of it. So you kind of were always aware what he was going through, even though him having PTSD was not a plot point per se, you know? And he had, you know, when he was running, he would have these flashbacks and you could tell how traumatic it was for him. But it didn't hit you over the head with it. So it was handled, I felt, in a very sort of human and realistic way. And so I really appreciate that. And actually, so after the movie, when the cast was all sitting there on the stage, just letting everybody come up and talk to them, because they're peaches, they're little angels. Anyway, so when I got up to David, I got to ask him a question. I was like, hey, so, you know, you don't say the word PTSD, but you know, there was this and that and the other thing, and you kind of put it together. Is this something you were conscious about? We are depicting mental illness. He goes, oh, yeah. We were calling it Colin's PTSD. Like, we knew, we were very, like, they were very, like, respectful and intelligent of what they were doing. Like, they knew it mattered what they were doing, and they did it well. So I really appreciated that. And it's, for God's sake, go see that movie as soon as it comes out. So good. And then the second one, I thought I would talk about a fantasy setting, since we've talked about kind of the serial drama and the superhero movie. I'm really going to have to talk about Supernatural. I know you guys aren't going to be surprised by that. But as a series, and I've said this before, but I don't think it is any coincidence that all of the charities and activism and celebrity t-shirts and literally every part of the fandom, I mean, it's all related to mental health. You know, we have a peer support line. I mean, just the literal bulk of everything the fandom does is around mental health. You know, the Always Keep Fighting campaign, which Jared Padalecki, you know, started, and but it's not, you know, it's become something much bigger. The You Are Not Alone campaign, which was Jensen and Misha. And, you know, you look at other fandoms and there isn't necessarily that unity of purpose of the kind of service work that they do. And it's just, it's no coincidence, because I mean, because as far as I'm concerned, the show is absolutely, whether on purpose or not, become one of the most just searingly accurate and relatable portrayals of what it is like after, you know, in your childhood, you had an abusive, chaotic home life, and now you're trying to make sense of life and do what's right and get on with things with your sibling. And you've both gone through a lot, you know, and some people are like, oh, was their childhood abusive? Really? You know, it depends on how you see John Winchester. But regardless of how you see their parents, I mean, they're fighting monsters, obviously, and that can be metaphorical. They're moving around constantly.
From when they were like 8 years old. So it's like,
they're handling weapons. You don't have to feel any kind of way about John Winchester to say their lives were violent and horrifying and terrifying. And
I feel some kind of way about John Winchester.
Girl, me too.
I know, we know, girl.
Me too. But
I know.
You know, I'm just saying. But that was what they had. And so even taking away the metaphorical elements, and then you have two siblings, and, you know, obviously my sister's on the podcast today, and there's a reason both of us really relate to the show as well, because there are so many, I mean, because it's about obviously resilience and survival, but it even drills down more specifically than that. It's how you're an adult that deals with trauma, especially when trauma keeps happening. And how two siblings, when they have responded and survived the trauma in completely different ways, learn to live life and move forward, even while all their trauma is still bouncing off of each other and sometimes hurting each other. Because that's what happens in families with siblings. And like, for example, there's one episode where the boys are in heaven, and I always go back to this episode.
Oh God, that
the dark
episode
side of the
just
moon.
designed to destroy people.
Yeah, the dark side of the moon. And the man who wrote it is actually the showrunner now. And when they named him as a showrunner, and I was like,
he wrote that?
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah, that's why this season is so freaking good. Because the man understands, he understands the heart of the show, and he understands siblings, whether he has one or not, I don't know. But you see that, sorry, I'm trying to look up his name because suddenly I've forgotten.
Andrew Dabb?
There, yes, there we go, Andrew Dabb. I always want to say Andrew Glass, and I'm like, wrong one. Yeah, so they are going back over scenes in their childhoods, and it's just brilliantly done because Dean is the one who, loyalty above all, and that may have been his mess, but it was his mess, sees, oh, well, remember, we didn't have all bad times and good times, the same memory. But with Sam, he fully, the way he processed it, it was like, I want to get out of here. I want to go to college. I want to be a normal person who's not dealing with violence and pain and death every day. And they just went complete. I mean, that's human nature, though. Our makeup is different, and we all deal in different ways. And so it was brilliant how they would talk about their same child, and you would think they were talking about a different moment or a different childhood from each other, even though they were in the same home with the same experiences, and how that made Dean feel and how that made Sam feel, because they grew up together, yet they felt so isolated from one another in that moment. And Dean even felt rejected. And it's just so complex. It's layer after layer after layer. And you're like, how did you get that right? And how are you putting this on the screen, especially when it's a show about werewolves and vampires and, characters that don't always have very consistent character development. And, a show that has lots of problems, but an episode like that, and you just want to just be like, oh my God, like someone sees me, And obviously, both of the boys have been to hell. Both of them have had PTSD. And Dean, especially this last season, you have seen him, like, the depression on him is just palpable, So even though a lot of it's metaphorical, there's a reason the fandom that follows Supernatural, that feels that Supernatural has saved their lives, are people who experience mental illness. And there's a reason the culture of the show is what it is. So that is why also I continue to watch Supernatural.
Yeah, I'm not caught up. I'm behind, but I've read a lot that makes me want to catch up on this season of Supernatural, because don't get me wrong, all of what you said is true, but they have done some things so wrong also. Like, they will do something so traumatic, and then next week it's just gone. Season 8, especially 7, they got to the point where, they just would pick and choose. This is going to affect them mentally and then emotionally, and then this horrible thing is going to happen next season, but next episode it's going to be like, we never even knew who Kevin was. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So I feel like they've had missteps, but
consistency is not,
like you said, there is a reason why people with, people that are marginalized, people with mental illness, like, there's a reason why we make up the majority of the fandom, and it's because I feel like people that are in the fandom feel like they've gone through, or they are going through their own version of hell, and just watching the boys just fight through it at every turn, like, even when they have no hope, gives them some sort of inspiration. And part of it too is Padalecki being open about his depression. That's a lot of where the charities came from. But even without that, they've always, their fan base has always been largely female, a lot of LGBTQ folk, a lot of people that have mental illness. And I feel like it's because they're like watching these boys just constantly battle their way out of hell and deal with all this shit. And you just translate it into real life, and that's what they feel like they're doing.
Absolutely. And Supernatural, like I said, 13 years, consistency is not its strong suit for sure.
No.
But also there's different levels of how accurate they can be. And I think it's the sibling relationship that is what they're almost always accurate about, what it's like going through that together, and how it is fortifying, but also difficult,
Yeah.
Like,
The episode you're talking about was a perfect encapsulation.
absolutely.
Because
And-
you just see how differently they were like, saw the exact same events. And a lot had to do with their age and their place in the family and everything else. But you're right. Some people are just fundamentally different in their nature. So they're going to process everything differently.
Yeah. And, how, they're constantly referred to as codependent because they have,
They are.
because they are, they've had a incredibly dysfunctional life, and they are the only thing they have in their minds. And really, they are the only things they have.
They're supposed to be the protectors, but they would throw the earth into the sun to save each other.
Yeah.
They would kill every other person on the planet, literally, if it meant that they didn't lose their brother. And it's a little extreme in the codependency side, let's be honest.
It's not inaccurate though, to be honest. And then I think, they show the parts of it, how it makes them strong and how it makes them weak, and how they might be the most important thing to each other, but sometimes they also really want to punch each other. Like there's that one episode that me and you are always talking about, Michelle, which is
the Charlie episode.
Yeah.
He's like, I know. He's like, you're gonna have to punch me. Dean is telling Sam because he has to be knocked out. He's like, you're gonna have to punch me. I know you don't want to. It's like crack, right? And he says that. Sam just knocks him the fuck out. And it's sorry, am I allowed to cuss in this?
Yes, you're allowed to cuss. This is a cussing
it's
podcast.
Okay, good. It is the funniest thing because it was like so many seasons in the making. Because before they like, oh, I don't want to. Should I? I don't want to hurt you. And he's just like, I know you don't want to. And he's like, boom, like knocked out. And it is the funniest moment because you're like, you know what? They're just accepting if they have this baggage, and if they get the chance to knock each other out, they're gonna take it.
Well, the truth of the fact that they would let anyone in existence, including the entire planet, die if they meant to save. Yet Dean could not get through his sentence without getting punched the fuck out by Sam when he's like, I know you don't want to, bitch. Yes, I want to.
Kind of. What show have you been watching? I want to.
I want to punch you so bad. So
but they do have episodes where they show that their codependency is like harmful, but they also do just as many that show like that whole we humanize each other kind of thing. We keep each other human. The end. One of my favorite episodes, my top 5 episodes of Supernatural, where they show what happens if they break apart. Because it's no more healthy than being as codependent as they are. When they're apart, they just sort of go into their own heads and they don't have that person sort of calling them back and keeping them on the straight and narrow, being like, no, you're being ridiculous. Well, so that was, they portray it both ways, being healthy and unhealthy. Well,
and because they are codependent, but they also are the only 2 people because everyone else dies in this world. So it's like they had
That's okay because they all come back like 5 times each. So it doesn't matter.
No bitterness there. But they do eventually have to come, after a few tries, have to come to the conclusion that, look, it can be harmful together. It's worse apart. We're just going to have to make the best of it together. Yeah. So. Yep. Anyway,
we ended up talking about Supernatural 10 times longer than anybody else talked about anything.
In my defense, it's 13 episodes of a show. 13 seasons of a show. So.
That's true.
Okay, well, before we wrap it up, I just want to go around and, because like Michelle mentioned, there's some really horrific losses this last week. Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, and it's really hard to even say that out loud. And as though it's a fact, it's still really, really painful. And that's another reason talking about this stuff is important and making sure that people who make our entertainment understand to take it seriously. So since we're on this heavy topic, do you guys want to end on a note of, hey, if you're struggling, here are some things that worked for me, or, some sort of advice on how to cope or help others?
Sure. When I get depressed, I know that people tell you, or I'm having an anxiety attack. A lot of times, a lot of things that we've seen recently in light of the tragic events this past week, Just talk to people. You just have to talk to them. Well, I'm not a talker, not verbose at all. Probably don't want to talk to you. Probably want to be left alone.
Mm-hmm.
That's just me. Like, the way that I cope is I write. I read a lot. And eventually I'll come out of it. If it's truly severe, I want to say reach out, but chances are I won't talk to you. It's just the way that I cope. I don't.
Well, you're also married. You're in a supportive relationship. So that
Yes.
makes a huge difference. Can you talk to your spouse?
I can, but he is of the mind of, how do I fix it?
Right.
How do I fix this? Please let me fix you.
Yeah.
What do
So
I
you're
need to
saying
do?
he's a boy is
Yeah.
basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
he's stressed out. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want a cup of tea? Do I need to keep the baby away? Do you want, just let me lay in this bed and just let me lay here, and I'll write, and eventually I'll come out and I'll snap out of it. But sometimes that isn't the case for everybody. I know that somebody may need that rope that I don't really need. And you just have to take appraisal of the people that you care about around you and see what it is that they need, and try to talk to them. What do you need from me? I don't need anything right now. But and they may say that, and it may be a ruse, and they just may be falling slower, but you kind of need to be there for them. Don't just call that one time, check in on them, and hang up thinking you did your due diligence. If you know that person, just keep continuing to reach out.
Yeah.
Keep continuing to reach out is the best thing I can say.
Yeah, for sure. And before we go to Quinzel, I want to say, the fact all the studies say having a supportive partner makes a big difference. And so if your partner is not supportive, not you, Leslie, but people listening, that's an issue, and you deserve someone who's supportive. So I just wanted to say that.
Yes.
And Quinzel, what about you? Do you have anything to say to people who might be struggling?
Yeah, actually, first I kind of wanted to tag a little bit on what Leslie was saying about other people who are responding to somebody who's struggling. Your responsibility for suicide awareness, it doesn't end with an "I'm here if you need to talk" post.
Mm-hmm.
So if you post that, you need to mean it.
Mm-hmm.
If you have that solidarity, it takes more than a post. You have to reach out. I'm the type of person, I know, my downfall is, even if you say, "I am here for you if I need to talk," trying to start that conversation is like trying to lift up 100-pound rock. Like, it doesn't matter if I squat. It doesn't matter if I can't lift it. And, so I will say what works for me is when people actually reach out to me and say something to me directly. I feel a little bit better about opening up than actually trying to reach out to them, which actually leads into one of my next tips. There is this app. It's called the Not Okay app. And if you're not the kind of person and where it's hard to reach out to others, basically it's an app where it's a button that you press on your phone. And when you're not feeling okay, and then after that, it actually sends your GPS location and a message to your immediate support system. And you can choose who that is. And it's basically like saying, like, "I'm not okay. Please come find me, call me, or text me," something like that. The website describes it as, when you can't think of the right words, the Not Okay app takes the guesswork out of getting help and support you need through immediate support from your friends, family, or peer network. Simply open the app, tap the Not Okay button, and a text message along with your current GPS location will be sent to your pre-selected contacts.
Okay.
So it definitely takes the pressure off of reaching out. So if you're anything like me, just starting that sentence, "I can't do it, but I could probably press a button."
Yeah.
I've never heard of that. That sounds awesome.
Yes, it is on iOS and Android. Not Okay app. Not Okay is all one word. So if you guys want to take a look through that, I haven't personally used it yet because I'm poor. and it is a subscription service. But one of the hacks that you can do around that, you can create a group of emails, an automated text that can go out. A lot of phones have the SOS button, like if you press the power button 3 times or something like that, you can kind of set it up to work in that same way. If a monthly subscription, I think it does have a trial though, so you can try it out, so you don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
And then one other thing, piece of advice that I want to give on how to cope, I have to kind of trick myself when I'm in a healthier state. And so I hope that this can help somebody else out there. When I'm just a little bit better, you know, especially when I was dealing with postpartum depression, it comes in waves, really big waves. And when I was down, I could look at my coffee table and I could see the bottle of hydrocodone and be like, you know, that should probably not be in my eyesight.
Yeah.
So I actually told my husband, here's what I want you to do. Because, you know, I had just given birth, so of course I need pain meds. But if you could hide them and keep them from me and just administer them to me when I need them once a day, that would mean a lot to me. And, you know, as we said, sometimes our partners are like, okay, what can I do? Okay, I'm concerned. I'm like, just do this one thing. Like, I'm in a better place right now, but I'm taking preventative measures for ahead of time. So sometimes if you have a thought, and if there's a way that you can enlist your support system to help you in certain ways, you just kind of have to get creative about it and be open about what you need. And that's just an example of one of the things that I've done.
That makes a lot of sense. Michele, do you have any advice to leave people with?
You know, I don't feel remotely qualified.
You're alive. You know why
now.
you're qualified? You're alive. We're all alive here. So how did we get?
Yeah, no. So honestly, like, Becca knows this, but I've been such a huge fan of Anthony Bourdain for so long. You know, read all his books multiple times, just kind of watched all his shows, watched him evolve as a person throughout them. So for me, I'm still so raw. I almost didn't do this episode because I was like, can I even talk about this right now? Because I'm just so upset still. And it might sound stupid to people who don't really connect that emotionally to people that they've never met, which is understandable. But for me, I was just completely just crushed. And I'm still feeling that way, and I'm feeling a little fatalistic. So I'm not going to really talk about any advice that I have because I'm feeling very just sort of angry and sad. But what I will say is I read a thread on Twitter about somebody who was talking about what helped her. And I was like, yes, because, you know, we've suffered loss. And I remember when I was going through that grief, I was like, that's the kind of thing that would help. And it ties into what you're saying about don't just accept when people say, oh, I'm fine. She was talking about, you know, it was the year after her father had passed, and she was so depressed, and she had moved into a new place, and it had been, I think she said like a month or something, and she had not even unpacked a single box, and her house was just full of just junk, and she was isolating herself. And she said that one of her friends, you know, called to check on her, and she gave him the whole thing of I'm fine, everything's fine. But he knew that, you know, he was her friend since grade school. He knew she was full of shit. So what he did, and she even said he took a chance. I could have gotten mad, I could have got offended, but he just basically called up like 8, 9 of their closest friends and was like, she's in a bad spot. Let's go over there. Let's clean her place. Let's fix it up. Let's bring pizza. Let's bring games. Let's make it fun. And he called her and just said, hey, can I stop by on Thursday night? You're going to be home. And she said, yes. This motherfucker shows up with 10 of like their closest friends, cleaning supplies, pizza, all this stuff. And they basically just brushed her off. She's like, don't come in. I'm like, no, nothing's unpacked. And they just were like, nope. She's like, they were so bossy and assertive that I just sort of sat down and just let them do it. And they put away she put up pictures of them, like putting up her bookcase, putting away all her stuff, and making, you know, just doing stupid, like silly stuff with all the stuff they're finding in the boxes, making her laugh. And she's like, you know, 3-4 hours later, they left and I had a home. You know, it wasn't just this pile of boxes that I was hiding from the world and just like laying down. And she's like, you know, it's not a fix, but like it made such a huge deal because not only was it something she needed and she would never ask for, but it was something that like that memory is now attached to that place. And, you know, every time she thinks about that point in her life, she's going to remember that. So I was thinking, like, if you're really close to that, like close enough to somebody to know what they need, just do it. You know, you are taking a chance. They might be offended. They might reject you, or they might be it might be a life-changing gesture. So
Yeah.
that's definitely something that I was like, well, that's try to be that kind of friend is what I would tell myself
Right.
and anyone else.
Yeah. That's amazing. I have to look up that Twitter thread.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Okay. And then for me, like I said, I've had 25 years of clinical depression, and I could write a novel about this. In fact, I might. But I would say to anyone who's suffering, I think there's a couple important mindsets to have. One is that if you are alive, there's a part of you that wants to be alive. You have to listen to that part of yourself and focus on that part of yourself. You also have to know this is a long haul. If the first thing you try does not work, if the first therapist is crap, you need to try the next one. If the first medication doesn't work, that's natural, that's normal. You need to try the next one. It's a marathon. It is not a sprint. And having those realistic expectations can help. As far as tools, I think in this country, it's incredibly difficult because even if you are insured, mental health may not be covered because apparently our brain isn't part of our bodies and so isn't important, and I'm not sure why we got to that point, but I have tried multiple things. One, if you need therapy and you are near a teaching hospital, almost all teaching hospitals have reduced sliding scale and sometimes free therapy because they have doctors training there to be psychiatrists, and they can prescribe and they can listen to you. And sometimes they are open-minded and fresh because they are new to the field and they can be amazingly helpful. Another thing I found helpful, I did go to Al-Anon for quite some time. So we know that AA is 12-step for people with alcohol addiction. Al-Anon is for their friends and family. It's basically Codependence Anonymous. And it just teaches you how to set appropriate boundaries because you're never going to get better if you have a bunch of people in your life who treat you like garbage. And so it kind of helps you go, okay, that's not something I need to put up with, or that's actually something I'm doing that's crossing a boundary. And it just teaches you some basic skills to have a healthy life.
Teaches you can't fix everyone,
Yeah.
And it's for, I think, family members of people that like Narcotics Anonymous, everything. Basically, any person who's felt the need, they are the ones that have to fix this person or else.
Yeah, and it just basically, it's Codependence Anonymous, and it's just based, honestly, it's healthy life skills, and not all of us were taught that as children, so it was really nice. Okay, so we're getting a little bit of feedback or a noise here. I'm not sure what's happening, but
Sorry, I was trying to plug in, charge my thing.
okay.
It's dying.
Okay, so, and as for how you can help people, first of all, if you have never experienced mental illness, I urge you to keep your mouth shut and listen when people are telling you what depression is like and what it's about. Because whenever something like this happens, there's just an avalanche of people, even people who are well-meaning, who are saying things that are judgmental, blaming people, guilting them, and it's so toxic and it's so painful to anyone listening. Anyone around you might have experienced suicidal depressions before. So if you have an urge to say anything judgmental about anyone who has committed suicide, I urge you to shut your mouth.
Please.
I urge you to shut your mouth, and I urge you to open your ears and learn before you consider opening your mouth again, in fact, because you can quickly become a blight on other people's lives who are trying to survive, and then just be honest. Like, I've gotten in the habit of saying, hey, are you feeling depression right now? Don't be afraid to freaking say it. Are you safe right now? Do you feel like hurting yourself? Like, I will say it these days. I will absolutely say it because people aren't always going to tell you, and pussyfooting around it is not anybody's friend. So I would say that's, and then for God's sake, as a political geek, I have to tell you, please, 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 please support and demand increased funding for mental health care, and support people who are running for office who will support mental health care. So,
And statistics do show that after high-profile suicides, suicide in general rates go up. So it is a time to just be extra aware and pay attention to people in your lives, because it's, it definitely, it puts it in people's minds, and it just starts looking like a solution to some people. So,
yeah,
this is always going to be just like a time to pay attention.
a vulnerable time, a time for kindness, not a time for your fucking hot take, Karen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
So, just saying. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks to all the Geeky Girls for coming to talk about this really important issue. I know it's on a lot of people's minds, and so we're glad you guys joined us. Does anybody have anything they wanted to add before I
don't think so. I think I'm good.
Okay, well, we love you guys. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for listening to our episode today on mental health in art and entertainment. It's such an important topic, especially right now. And I think it's important for us to talk about these sort of issues and lift one another up and remind each other to be kind.
And while talking about these issues can become heavy, make sure that you take care of yourself and protect yourself, protect your heart.
Yes. And, we'll put some links in the show notes. There's quite a few good blog posts I've found of people talking about what's helped them.
Yeah, the show notes this time will probably be in a PDF form so that you can just easily download it from a link and just be able to read everything.
Cool. Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Since we are podcast newbies, it would mean a lot to us if you'd subscribe and rate us on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Also, we love to hear from our listeners. Leave us a voicemail at 785-746-2604. Email us at ask@geekygirlguide.com, or hit us up on social media at Geeky Girl Guide, all one word, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
And remember, in the words of the great John Barrowman, never apologize for being nerdy. Until next time.